Today, we're going to talk about how managing your overseas team actually creates more problems for your e-commerce business. I'm Zach. I'm the founder of Talented. We place talent from the Philippines into 7- and 8-figure e-commerce businesses. We have our own Amazon store that does $1 million a year in revenue, and I've been hiring from the Philippines since 2021. I'm making this video because I keep seeing e-commerce founders make the same mistake that I used to, controlling every little thing their VA did and calling it leadership. But it's the reason their team still can't get anything done without them. If you've ever spent your day fixing sloppy work, answering nonstop questions, or doing the work that you already assigned, this one's for you. I want you to have a strong team that actually owns the outcomes even when things get messy, and one day I hope you'll work with us to find your next overseas hire. So the topics we're going to cover are the fear that causes micromanagement, the context switch to get your team thinking like you do, my freedom framework for what to check and when, and how to transition your team into being accountable. There are a couple expenses associated with being a micromanager. First, it's going to cost you your time. You spend all of it reviewing work rather than delegating it. Then it's going to cost you retention because good VAs are not going to stick around when they feel like they're being babysat. It's going to cost you your ability to scale because you are the bottleneck. And it's going to cost you your freedom because if you take even one day off, everything falls apart. Now, I see this a lot in people that are hiring for the first time. To me, I think it comes down to a fear of losing control, and you justify it to yourself. You say things like, I just want to make sure it's done right, and it's just faster if I do it myself, or I'll let go once they prove themselves. And don't get me wrong, I was this way too, until I realized I was holding them back. I was getting in their way from being at their best. My favorite analogy for this is the safety net. Basically, that if you're the final checkpoint for everything in the business, everything your team does, they start to lose subconsciously that personal responsibility. You know, there's no reason for them to really double check it because they know you'll be there to catch their mistakes. The first way I shift to this is by focusing on the context over the control, because leadership does not mean quality control. It means giving my team context so they can make the right calls, the same decisions that I would. Instead of telling them what to do, I start telling them why we are doing it and how it benefits them. That's when they shift from following instructions to critical thinking on their own, doing what's asked to solving the problem, and checking the box to owning the outcome. Before, I might hand my team a very detailed step-by-step checklist SOP and say, follow this exactly. Now, I might say, here's what we're trying to do. How do you think we should get there? Your job is not to manage every move. It's to build a team that doesn't need you in the day-to-day. That's how you become a true entrepreneur. Now, the 3-tier freedom framework I use is broken down into the daily pulse, the weekly trends, and the monthly outcomes. Freedom does not mean letting go. It means reviewing the right things with just enough oversight to stay in control. This is how I hold my team accountable without micromanaging every task they do. Starting with the daily pulse. For me, this is a focused 30-minute check-in. I get status updates from my team as to what's going on, and then I've also automated it through webhooks. So if you see here, I get my Amazon sales report every day, our revenue, as well as our sourcing report. And then past that, I'm limited to the high-impact stuff that only I can do, and I empower my team for the rest. So for me, that's like purchasing decisions above a certain amount, client-facing deliverables, new supplier onboarding, stuff like that. The daily pulse is focused on the day-to-day inputs, the actions we're taking that are going to get us to our outcomes. Then weekly, I look more at patterns. So stuff that's not going to tank the business in a day, but if it's left unchecked for long enough, like a month, it's going to compound and become a real issue. So this is more medium risk stuff. I'm looking at our KPI dashboards, seeing how we're on pace for the month. For example, if I have X goal revenue number, I want to make sure that our week-to-week trend is going to hit that. Then repricing. Are we balancing velocity and profitability well? What small problems are continually showing up that we can nip in the bud right now? Basically, answering the question of, are we moving in the right direction? It's the in-between of the daily and the monthly. Then comes my favorite one, the monthly outcome assessment. This is where I zoom out and look at what was actually produced. This is where I take on more of a strategist, a CEO role. Did the system deliver what it was supposed to? With this longer time horizon of month to month, I have more clarity of thought because I'm not so caught up in the day-to-day, week-to-week fluctuations. This is also where my team gets true context of their work, the outcomes they've produced. In my business, this comes in two forms. First is our monthly recap meeting, as well as goal setting, and then our KPI report. So for the KPI report, my team will put together our most impactful, our most important KPIs and look at them month to month and year over year. And for the ones that are standing out, whether they're really good or really bad, they'll deep dive into why that is. And then they'll give me recommendations for the bad ones on what we can do to improve in the next month. So this whole thing gives them ownership of the highs as well as the lows. Throughout this assessment, I'm asking myself, what's trending in the right direction and what is not? Where are the bottlenecks and who do I need to empower to fix those? And what is going to be our focus for the next month? I make the decisions that are going to move the whole machine forward here. Now, in order to implement this into your business, you need to take a step back without taking a step out. We want to move from micromanager to empowering leader. Now, week one, you're identifying where you are the bottleneck. The goal is to find the moments you jump in when you really shouldn't. So auditing where your input is most valuable, where it's not, logging every time you feel the urge to recheck, rewrite, redo something your team did. Ask yourself, did they actually need me there or was I just reacting? Then finding 2 to 3 daily tasks you can hand over to your team and start checking in monthly on those and identifying what would done right without me look like for you. In week one, we're identifying what needs to change. Week two is about equipping your team to think without you. So first, recording a loom for every task I do and explaining why it matters, why I'm clicking what I'm clicking. They're basically shadowing you and learning your decision-making process. On Slack or in stand-ups, I want to shift to the big picture, focusing on what was done, what decisions they made, what roadblocks they faced, having them think these things through critically rather than just getting right to the outcome. And when your team hits you with questions that you could easily answer, you know the answer to, hitting them back with, what do you think we should do? Most of the time, they already know what to do. You just need to get them to flex that muscle. In week two, you start seeing signs they're thinking like you. Week three is about reviewing the right things at the right time. So rolling out your 3-tier review system, your daily pulse to get an update on everything and focus on your highest leverage tasks, the weekly trends to spot your patterns, and the monthly outcomes to steer the ship forward. This is also where you can start rewarding autonomy publicly, so creating that continuous feedback loop, that recognition loop when your team is accountable for their outcomes. In week three, you get out of the weeds without losing control of the machine. Week four is where we make the team members responsible for the results, not just for being busy. If you remember, we talked about the safety net. That's when it gets eliminated and your team is like, oh wait, now I'm suddenly the last line of defense for everything. I really have to get it done right. You're assigning the ownership here to your team of the KPIs, not only the recording, but also the reporting on the wins, the losses, and the recommendations for improvement. I also will tailor the KPIs, who gets assigned what based on their roles so they can see how their inputs affect the outcomes. Here is where we start using mistakes as training moments, not reasons for me to jump back in, asking things like, where did our system fail? I had a great example of this just this week. We had an eBay order that was canceled and then still shipped out to a customer. And the first thing my admin Danielle said to me was, can you fix the email forwarding so I know about that next time? Instead of waiting for me to tell her what to do, she immediately came up with a solution to the problem. Now, I have 2 bonuses for you. The first is the offline challenge. I used to do this one all the time with my team captain, Christelle. Basically, I would disappear for a day and put her in charge of my tasks. It was a low-risk way to see how she would handle them and also build up that confidence over time. The second one is peer review. So I have my team review tasks amongst each other before they even get to me. Not only does this create redundancy where if someone's out for the day, someone else can handle it, but it also builds that internal accountability for each other. Eventually, it becomes task owner, peer reviewer, and only me if needed. For a lot of tasks, we can just bounce between these two. In your journey from micromanagement to empowered leadership, mistakes are gonna happen, but the goal is to fix the system, not each individual task. So here's how I course correct without falling back into micromanaging. First, leading with curiosity, asking things like, what resources would help you succeed here? Then diagnosing the root. Is it a training issue? Is it a context gap? Do they feel empowered enough to complete the task right? Then being the coach, giving them the tools and the structure, not the answer. Now, I want to be clear. Avoiding micromanaging does not mean stepping away. You're not removing yourself. You're repositioning as the coach. When your team starts thinking for themselves, you don't have to catch every mistake. You get your time back. You get your mental energy back, and your business stops stalling every time you look away. Eventually, you'll notice a shift. Tasks get done without reminders. Problems get solved before they reach you. Opportunities move faster because your team's not waiting for you. That's when you know they're not following you. They're creating with you. That's how you build a team. Now, if this sounds like something you can handle, there's still one crucial piece missing. You have to find and hire these exceptional team members in the first place. So if you want my full 2-week process on how I hire from the Philippines, click this video right here. I appreciate you watching the end, and I'll see you in the next video.